Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and I saw Kung Fu Panda 4 and I really enjoyed it. Now I was very much looking forward to this movie. I am a massive fan of the original trilogy. I think like everyone else there's some of the best that DreamWorks has to offer. Even the third one, which I know a lot of people have their gripes about, I think is pretty solid. Not as good as 1 or 2, but still up there as some of the best DreamWorks has made, and still a very solid movie on its own. And I was definitely curious to see what they would do with this next edition. The trailers looked promising, and the story itself sounded pretty interesting, like a solid continuation from where the third film left things off. And while this is definitely the weakest film of the franchise so far, I still had a ton of fun with it and thought it was a pretty solid addition to the franchise. First off, the animation here is solid. Despite this being much cheaper than the other Kung Fu Panda films, this is only an $85 million film, whereas the other ones were around $130 million, believe it or not. The animation looks still excellent here. I love the designs of all the animals and the locations here, and we get to see more new different types of animals here and new locations, and they all look very nice. Love the new locations and settings we get to. They're really fun and interesting to explore, and the variety of new animal designs are also very cute, very appealing, and I think the animators did a good job on that. The animation is quick, it's fast, there's an energy to it that really helps with the comedy and especially the action sequences, which, like the rest of the Kung Fu Panda films, are also top notch. There's a style and energy and quickness to them that makes them really fun and really entertaining to watch, and definitely makes them stand out here than the other films for sure. The choreography is solid. The sequences as a whole can be pretty funny, pretty exciting, and even pretty intense, especially when the chameleon has to use her shape-shifting powers. That's when the action sequences between her and Po get really creative, intense, and are definitely the highlights of the film for sure. The characters are also really likable, charming, and fun to watch. Po is still as lovable as he always is. Jack Black is perfect casting, of course, and he really brings his A game to the character. And I love his arc of going through, having to go through significant changes through your life. And even though it may not be what you want, it just has to happen, and I thought they handled that very well. And of course, once again, Jack Black does a great job, and Po is just so lovable. It's hard to hate this character, really. He's just so funny and goofy and silly, but his heart is in the right place. There's also a subplot with his dads, Lee and Mr. Ping, and that's some of the funniest stuff in the movie. I could honestly watch a whole spin-off show involving those two characters. What they do in the plot is just so funny, so entertaining. They play off of each other very well, and they're just, once again, so likable, and the performances by Bryan Cranston and James Hong is just as good as the former films. And then there's the chameleon, the new antagonist. While I would have loved to seen a bit more of her, I thought she was another excellent villain here. I love her shape-shifting powers. I love Viola Davis's performance. You can tell she's having a ton of fun with the role. I love her backstory and just everything about her. Again, I wish we could have seen a bit more from her, especially in the first half. She doesn't have that much of a presence, really, but once she gets more to do in the second half of the movie, that's when she really shines, and they get to do a lot with her. I think she can also be really, really funny as well. She caught me off guard with some of the jokes that really made me laugh here and there. This movie is also really funny. Honestly, I think it's even funnier than the third film, if I'm being honest with you. There's an absurdism and a weirdness to the comedy. It's definitely sillier and goofier than the other films, but I think it works to its advantage because the comedy isn't afraid to get a bit more strange and out there with its humor, and I think that was one of its biggest advantages. I was laughing a lot throughout this movie, just a lot of the jokes, whether it just be, Mr. Ping and Li Shen on their subplot and their escapades, or even the dynamic between Po and Zhen, how they play off of one another, and of course Poe's like silly little antics and quick one-liners here and there. Just a lot of really solid comedy, whether it be the visual gags, the slapstick, or once again some of the one-liners. It's a really funny movie. And my last positive thing I'll say about this movie is that it still has the sweetness and the heart of the other films. Not as emotionally gripping as the other ones, especially not as emotionally gripping as the second one, but it's still got some sweet moments where it does slow down and let you take in the moment and let you get to know the characters. And there's some genuinely touching and sweet moments here that I really appreciated for sure. But unfortunately, I do have a lot of issues with this movie that prevent this from reaching the heights of the other films first. And the biggest problem with this movie, unfortunately, is the story. Now, on paper, this actually sounds pretty solid. It honestly sounds on par with the third one, honestly. Poe is about to be the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. He has to find a new successor while also taking on this threat that can shapeshift into literally anyone. That sounds cool and awesome, but unfortunately, the execution of it doesn't really live up. I feel like this should have been a much more serious, darker tone in this movie. Not like it has to be like a dramatic epic or anything. It could still be silly and goofy, but I feel like the tone for this film definitely clashes with what this movie could have been. There's definitely some wasted potential in the story. I feel like this could have been a bit more emotionally gripping, as I said, and the movie would have definitely benefited from a bit more of a dramatic and serious tone here, given the stakes and the severity of the situation. Because with the third one, yes, it is sillier and goofier than the other movies, but it still had that emotional weight, that depth that made you feel like, yeah, this is weaker than the other ones, but this is still a Kung Fu Panda film. This felt more like an episode of Legends of Awesomeness. Poe has to team up with a new character and go on his own adventure type thing. It felt less like a sequel to Kung Fu Panda and more like an episode of that show, if you get what I mean, as far as the story goes. I would have loved to see more of some of the older characters. Unfortunately, the Furious Five are not in this movie all that much, and Tai Lung is not in it as much either. He's still awesome and has some funny moments here, but I would have really appreciated to see more of some of the older characters, as I feel like they could have brought something interesting to the plot here as well. And their replacement, Zhen, is an interesting character. I don't hate the character. I think she gets better in the second half, because the first half she's just an Awkwafina character, snarky, a bunch of one-liners, a bit on the annoying side, unfortunately. And I don't have any problems with Awkwafina. I think she did a good job, but I think for this character, they probably should have gotten someone else, probably maybe someone like Leah Lewis or Stephanie Hsu or Ashley Park even. I feel like they would have fit the character a bit more here than Awkwafina. But even with those flaws, I still had a good time with Kung Fu Panda 4. Sure, it's got a lot of issues and it's definitely not on the same level as the first three, but if you don't go into that mindset, you just want another fun, silly adventure with Poe, yeah, I'd say go for it. It's still got great action sequences, great animation, hilarious jokes, likable characters, and a solid enough emotional heart at the center of it. Once again, if you're a fan of Kung Fu Panda, you just want to see another good adventure with Poe, and you're fine with it not being on par with some of the others, then I'd say go check it out. I don't think it's a must watch. You can probably wait a little bit until it's on video on demand or streaming to check it out. But if the kids really want to see it, or you're as curious as I was, I'd say go check it out in the theater. I think it's a fun time at the movies, and another solid entry in the franchise, even if it's not as good as the others. And those were my thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. What did you all think of it? If you've seen it, did you like it? Did you hate it? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links at the end of the video. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp. Everybody is kung fu fighting.